Hey, what is going on, guys? Lon here from Android Authority. And HTC's Desire lineup has always been pretty popular, but they usually don't make it to carriers in the United States. But we've finally gotten one that many consumers can now get their hands on. Let's take a look at the HTC Desire 610. So let's jump right into it, starting with the design of the Desire 610, and it's very similar to its bigger brother, the Desire 816, just in a much smaller form factor. It's entirely made of plastic, so it's not going to exude the same premium feel as the HTC One M8. The back is glossy while the sides are matte, so the glossy back is prone to fingerprints and light scratches, and it does feel a little bit slippery in the hand, but overall it's very well built. It is a pretty decent looking phone, so I don't think many people will have too many complaints about the design, but it does have some really thick bezels on all sides of the device, which I feel is making the phone bigger than it really needs to be, especially for its screen size. All the buttons and ports are in their typical locations for an HTC phone, with the power button and 3.5mm headset jack up top, volume rocker on the right side, micro USB port on the bottom, and your SIM and SD card slot with support up to 128 gigs is located on the left side, covered by a single flap. Even though the Desire 610 is a relatively low-end device, that didn't stop HTC from including their front-facing boom sound speakers, which has sort of become one of HTC's signature design cues. The quality might not be quite as good as the One M8's, but they're still front-facing speakers and certainly sound better than any phone out there with a back-facing single speaker. Taking a look at the display, it's a 4.7-inch LCD with a resolution of 960 by 540, so it's a pretty low-res display, and with such a low resolution, pixels definitely are noticeable when reading text or looking at graphics, and you're not going to be able to watch content in HD. The color calibration is questionable, and the viewing angles certainly aren't the best, but it does get pretty bright, so outdoor visibility isn't an issue, but other than that, this display doesn't have much going for it. For a 4.7-inch screen, I would have liked to see it come with at least 720p resolution. Inside, the HTC Desire 610 is being powered by a Qualcomm Snapdragon 400 processor with 1GB of RAM, which is pretty typical specs when it comes to mid to low-end devices, but the Desire 610 actually performs quite well through everyday usage. I didn't run into any major problems with lag or anything like that. Swiping and scrolling is still pretty smooth, apps opened relatively quickly, multitasking wasn't a problem, and games played on it just fine without any issues. It probably also helps out quite a bit that the processor doesn't have as many pixels to push around due to the low resolution display. Around the back, you're going to find an 8-megapixel camera with LED flash, and as far as the camera interface goes, it's pretty much the same as what you'll find on other HTC phones. It's a really simplistic and clean interface, and you've got all of your standard settings like ISO, exposure value, white balance, HDR, etc. It is a slightly more watered down version in comparison to what you'll find on something like the HTC One M8. There's no U-focus or any of that 3D stuff, obviously, because the camera isn't capable, and if you want Zoe's, you'll have to use HTC's Beta Zoe application. The picture quality, however, is pretty unimpressive. Photos lack a lot of sharpness, they just appear very soft around the edges and noisy. Colors look washed out, and you can pretty much forget about taking photos in low light. Is this camera going to stop you from posting to social networks? Probably not, but don't expect anything spectacular out of this camera. When it comes to the battery life, it's got a 2040 mAh battery inside, which sounds really small, especially compared to some of the major flagships out there nowadays with 3000 mAh batteries. But even with a battery of just barely over 2000 mAh, I was able to make it through a full day of normal usage without a whole lot of trouble. Keep in mind the display is pretty low resolution, so it's not going to draw a whole lot of power like it would with a 1080p display or a 2K display. So whether I was texting, browsing the web, checking social networks, watching YouTube, or playing a few games here and there, the battery life seemed to hold up pretty well. On the software side of things, the Desire 610 is running on Android 4.4.2 KitKat, with HTC Sense 6 software, and if you use any HTC device as of late, the experience on the 610 will be very familiar territory. You've got all the same features that we're used to by now with Sense 6, from the vertical scrolling app drawer, blink feed on the leftmost home screen, and HTC's own customization options. Since this is the AT&T model of the Desire 610, there's also no shortage of AT&T bloatware pre-installed either. If you love HTC devices and you're a fan of simplicity and cleanness of the Sense 6 software, you will definitely feel right at home with the Desire 610. The Desire 610 is available now on AT&T for a price of 99 cents on a 2-year contract, or $200 if you decide to buy it outright, and it does support LTE connectivity as well, which is always good. It's a pretty reasonable price given that this is a rather low-end smartphone, so obviously if you have to have the best of the best, this phone isn't going to be for you. But not everyone out there needs the latest and the greatest smartphone. Some people just need a phone that works, and if that's what you're looking for, or if you know someone that would benefit greatly from a phone like this, the Desire 610 is a great option without breaking the bank. But that is it for this review of the HTC Desire 610. If you're looking for a phone with HTC's signature features in a budget-friendly package, the Desire 610 is an overall very solid option. Anyways, thank you so much for watching, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up down below, and also subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on any future videos. That button is also down below. And once you're done doing all that, make sure to check out the website at androidauthority.com. And once again, thank you so much for watching. Keep it locked on Android Authority, as we are your source for all things Android.